Thank you, Chair. I have what I hope will be about 5 minutes worth of questions. I think Senator Davey has the same, and then we'll see the rest of our time so we can meet the 3:30 deadline, hopefully. Just returning to JobKeeper and my interest in the budget process with demand-driven programs, Dr Kennedy. When the government asked for Treasury's assistance in designing a demand-driven program, do they go to Treasury and say, we've got $130 billion to spend, can you reverse engineer the criteria to make sure it adds up to $130 billion? Or does government go to Treasury and say, we think this is appropriate criteria for this program, can you estimate how much this is going to cost?
In this case, it's the latter. In this case, Senator, we developed some advice in the light of the economic circumstances for the government of a demand-driven program that, as I said earlier, would be robust to whatever economic scenario emerged. And then we advised the government, and then they took decisions, and we continue to iterate on that program. And as part of that, we developed the costing for how much the program. So we were not given an envelope. We presented the government with a costing around the final version of the program, and the government then takes a decision, in this case, to proceed with the program. So it is not reverse engineering off an envelope. It is a point I've tried to make today, perhaps unsuccessfully, that often in responding to a crisis you may be thinking about an amount of fiscal response, 1% of GDP or some proportion. In the case of this shock, this sort of a truly novel and uncertain shock, our mindset shifted from what is proportion in that sense to what will be robust to a wide variety of scenarios, but will still, as the Finance Minister has pointed out, be capped or proportionate in the sense that it would apply. So, yes, that's how it's the latter, in short.
Thank you. There have been some public calls for the extension of the JobKeeper program beyond the legislated end date. What would the sense be in continuing an expensive program like that beyond the end date when it looks like economic activity might be returning to normal earlier than we first anticipated?
Well, I think, as the Finance Minister mentioned earlier, the government will consider in the coming months, as it is about this review, how a number of measures are finishing and the light of the economic circumstances that we face, because they have been changing rapidly. We are all sitting here feeling a lot more comfortable than what we were a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. There is still a global pandemic in play. There are still many countries, as I said earlier, experiencing at the moment the full force of the pandemic. So I think it would be wise to continue to track those circumstances and respond as necessary. We're also aware that a number of the repayment holidays that the banking system very successfully developed finish. There's a lot of thought going through to how that transition takes place. The key considerations really are about how strong the economy is recovering. If it's recovering strongly, then of course measures are more able to be withdrawn. But the government is also very mindful of a very sensible transition through that period. So the Finance Minister may wish to elaborate, but you're right to draw attention to it. The September through December into next year transition, will be a very an important transition, and it's one I think the government will watch very closely and respond as it needs to.
Just to follow up, yeah, thanks. I don't think there's any elaboration is necessary, Minister. Just to follow up, obviously there's be a cost to government if it chose to extend, or cost to taxpayers if it chose to extend beyond September in terms of dollars expended. But I imagine there'd be other potentially negative effects on things like labour market dynamism by tying people to businesses that who knows what their future might be when there are other businesses that would be desperate to get them on board.
Well, this is the way JobSeeker and JobKeeper work together. There's both the incentives inside the JobSeeker payment at the moment, and for example how mutual obligation has been turned off, and how the income test applies and other tests apply, and then within JobKeeper, yes, attaching a workforce that existed in March to that firm it will begin to move against dynamism. It is, if you like, dulling the incentives over time. So the nature of the support, the need for support has an aggregate demand consideration, but it does need to flex and allow the economy to readjust. There will be some businesses that are going to grow and grow rapidly and who want to take on more labour, and there's others who will be in a much more dire situation. And that adjustment's already occurring, but it hopefully, if the recovery continues in the way we foresee, will be accelerating through the latter half of the year.
Okay, and just finally, before I pass to Senator Davey, I think the government has said, including RBA measures, the total value of support is about $260 billion of measures. Does that include automatic stabilisers? And if not, could you take on notice what the value of automatic stabilisers might be?
It doesn't include automatic stabilisers. So the costing for the COVID supplement, for example, included the costing for the supplement itself.
Yeah.
But of course, more people on the job seeker payment. So there will be estimates variations, those types of automatic stabilisers. The largest automatic stabiliser, though, is not on the expense side, it is on the revenue side. And the government will make its estimates public on the 23rd of July, but we will see very substantial falls in revenue, and that's another way the economy stabilises, of course. There will be less company tax, less income tax across all heads of taxation. There will be significant falls.
Okay, thank you.